Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Let's talk about ego, and for once, let's talk about yours. And the bigger question is, what are you supposed to do about your ego when you're in a narcissistic relationship? Listen, a healthy relationship has room for both people's egos, but in a narcissistic relationship, usually the narcissistic person's ego is so loud that it drowns yours out. But your ego's not gone, it's just been silenced. So what are you supposed to do about that? This often comes up when people say to me, okay, blah, 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 Dr. Ramani, I get it, radical acceptance, they're not going to change. But are you telling me that if I can't leave this relationship, I have to put up and shut up to be in this relationship? Not necessarily. If you get into it with them, they aren't going to listen or change their behavior. So if you take the fight, you have to be prepared that it will go nowhere. What people will tell me is that I can't just let them get away with it. Maybe it's my ego, but I can't. And I am going to go to battle with them because I can't let them get away with this. To which I say, then yeah, do it. You do have an ego. And that ego may not be able to endure someone gaslighting you and invalidating you and lying to your face. Ego's not a bad thing. It's an essential part of our identity. I admire survivors who are able to retain that sense of ego despite the abuses of a narcissistic relationship. Most folks get exhausted by the never-ending fights. Most of us are not built to live in a volatile and constantly explosive situation. And that means slowly stepping back from taking the fights. But your ego may mean that there are some fights you take, kind of related to the true north we talk about. Maybe you value your abilities at something, and you know you're right about something that matters to you, and you're not just going to let them keep insisting on something wrong being right. Whatever it is, you have an ego. All human beings do. And while, like I said, you might have it on sleep mode, it's not just going to disappear. You can't just park your ego someplace else, and sadly for many survivors of narcissistic relationships, your ego gets bashed up a lot. Most people are not built or designed for chronic psychological combat. And as a result, the ego loses some of its strength and gets undercut by the constant self-blame, self-doubt, or ego development was thwarted by narcissistic parents. But even if it's thwarted, even if it's silenced, we still all have an ego. When we hold our ego back, when we don't express ourselves in yet one more argument with a narcissistic person, when we hold back, when we're being gaslighted, it takes its own toll on us. We are constantly balancing these two harms. We get exhausted and fearful because of the arguing, and narcissistic folks tend to fight mean, or we're holding back from arguing and feeling like we're giving up on ourselves. Initially, in any narcissistic relationship, for most people, your ego will take the fight. You may call the narcissistic person out on their inconsistencies, their lies, their future faking, and overall BS. And they will fight back with manipulation and gaslighting. And this part will go on for a while. It all comes down to how much skin you have in the game. If you're married, or have kids, or in a long-term committed relationship, if you have joint assets, or you still love the person, and you want to remain a part of a relationship, to not split up, or get divorced, or split up a family, that means the narcissistic person has a lot of power, because they will wear down your ego by dangling threats like they're going to end the relationship, or they doubt your commitment, or they use a whole host of other tactics that may play upon your own existing abandonment wounds, or that are just simply untrue. You may actually not want the relationship to end. What you want is for them to be accountable or to fight fair. And before you understood narcissism, you may have thought that those were reasonable and attainable goals. And it's very painful when you finally recognize that they're not, that damned radical acceptance. But once you understand narcissism, your ego is actually in a better place. You may be discerning about the fights you take. You may be able to know who you are and stop listening to their invalidating diatribes. You may be able to lean into your ego strength and be well possessed of your perceptions and experiences and, frankly, of reality. And if they gaslight you, then you simply know you are being gaslighted, and you don't fall back and wonder if you are wrong or bad or whatever the hell it is that they're accusing you of. Once you understand narcissism, your ego allows you to navigate the waters much more clearly because you are aware of your you. And you are aware that they're never going to see you clearly. There will be grief at first, but then as you grieve and then heal, you will see a path forward. Sometimes that path is leaving and sometimes it's not. But the key becomes to knowing that, yes, you do have an ego, a you, a sense of self. And while you recognize that to make it work for the narcissist, you have had to give up on that. But there is another option, which is to recognize that they don't get to be the only one with an ego in this relationship. That you see it clearly, you retain your sense of self, and you use that ego strength to foster healthy spaces outside of the relationship. And instead of them breadcrumbing you, why don't you try breadcrumbing them for a minute? Bring the bare minimum to these relationships. Save the best of you and that ego strength for the aspects of your life that are good for you. Your ego does have a place to flourish in a narcissistic relationship. But for that to happen, you have to clearly understand how these relationships work. But hold on to that healthy ego of yours, because you are going to need it. And just my little friendly, self-serving reminder, a little bit of my ego here. New book comes out in February. Please give it a look. Look at that link. Pre-order it. Comes out in February. Thanks again.